Oh, you went here? Okay.
You ready to go?
I'm on the law. You are too? Okay, all right. So are mine.
I don't have a gavel.
That was the challenge.
Yeah, it's Amanda Cunning.
Yeah. I remember that. I was working for an architect, and I was on. We were in a Victorian house in Hartford. I was on the second floor, and somebody had a little TV.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Thank you, Michael.
I think we're going to start. Thanks.
Yes, we are. Thank you, MC Michael. Man of many talents. Should we do a roll call first? Yes?
Yes.
You just go around. Chair, John Weiner.
Lauren Ryan.
Tom Romanoli with Downs Construction.
Michael Scott with TSKP.
Amanda Luther, TSKP.
Mary Lynn Raddick, TSKP.
Doug Sudell.
Kate Cumnick.
Brian DiCiaccio.
Rich Sitnick.
Sally Katz.
All present. Okay, first agenda item is adoption of the minutes from the March 10th, 2025 meeting. Were there any discussion or updates from those minutes? I did not see any personally.
Neither.
No.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes pass. All right, so our main course tonight. So tonight we're here at Highcrest Elementary School, and thank you everyone for coming. This is something that I think I want to do quite often, is go to many different schools. So this is just the first stop of all the different schools in town. But this one's important because if many of you may know, our last Monday, our town leaders asked us to, as a building committee, reassess our swing school location. I want to make swing school clear. I think this has been a conversation that has been confused around town many times. When we say swing space, it was correctly identified as TSKP as the new school being built, but it is the new community school being built in that neighborhood. The swing space is the older building. I just want to make that clear for everyone as we move forward here. So it's really a conversation of where we're going to build the first school for Wethersfield. So they're here tonight to go through the presentation of the two sites that are up here in the Highcrest area. I think we've shown the Stillman property quite often, and we've seen some feedback from that. So we wanted to come here to Highcrest and give you a presentation of the two parcels of land, Keisha Farm and Highcrest North, that we're calling it here, and get your feedback. So they're going to give a presentation. There'll be a question and answers for you all. You can raise your hand, and I'll lead that when we get to that point, and then we'll move on from there. So I am going to turn it over to Michael.
Thank you.
No.
I think just as we're talking, my computer decided to time out, so give me a second here.
Oh, I didn't realize that HCC was first.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Building Committee, it's great to see you again, and I really appreciate, I see a lot of, I think, new faces from the public, so I think this will be good. I think on the agenda, I'm supposed to recap Monday night's HDC meeting. I believe all of you were there, so you pretty much saw it firsthand, but I will summarize it as follows. The HDC has concerns about both portions of the Swing School Phase 1 initiative, both the construction of a new building in what they are considering open space, and which is the Stillman parcel, and then the consequential demolition of the Hamner building, which would be viewed as a taking of a historic asset in the historic district, the building being part of the 1966 and 71 milieu of the Wethersfield community. Professionally, I will say this. We have been under the advice of town council advised that we could likely carry the day on the construction of the swing school, particularly given the nature of the deed of the Stillman parcel. So regardless of how the HDC ruled on that application, via appeal, the likelihood of success is pretty good. Not guaranteed, but pretty good. The issue there is that in that success, it would be a very painful and drawn-out process, which is not how you want to begin phase one of a multi-phase project. And then I really have no opinion about the demolition of Hamner. So, in our minds, starting off this comprehensive plan with a phase one of Stillman is no longer in the town's best interest. Let's put it that way. It would not be, just in the act of losing a year on a building program of this magnitude, it could easily cost you $20 or $30 million, okay? Because that you would delay the last phase that far out. So, it's just not, I would much rather advise you to spend that money building educational space somewhere else for the elementary students of Weathersfield. Okay? So, that brings us here. Swing Sites Revisited. I'm going to go through a lot of material that you've already seen. I'm going to try to recast it based on what we know today versus what we thought we knew a few months ago. Then I'm going to present a recommended revised sequence, regardless of the remaining swing sites. I think the sequence is, in our mind, clear, and we'd like to present that as a recommendation. While we've been moving through the decision-making on phase one, because time is ticking, we have continued to push on phase 2 and 3, which so far are without question in the town. And I just want to update you on that to let you know that we are making hay on some of this. And then Tom, being fundamentally a CM in his DNA, is now going to take over the whole schedule portion because that's what CMs do. So, swing side options. Everybody knows this chart, right? I just want to replay it for you. I want to remind you that of all the sites in Weathersfield, these are the sites that we presented to you. 2 of them dropped off immediately. You'll recall that Emerson Williams and the existing Hamner site are not swing school options, right? They are not viable options. That's why the red down at the bottom. Then in discussion with you and town staff and the BOE, we also eliminated Samuel Webb, right? Because we're not going to go back and demolish Samuel Webb at the end. We're going to keep that for its educational and real estate assets that it represents to the town. And we eliminated Charles Wright because while we could build something on that lacrosse field, that is not an appropriate site for 2 schools worth of traffic letting out on Knott Road, okay? So then that left the 3 sites in the middle. Now, again, this board has been really good at resisting the temptation of presenting false choices. All 3 of these sites in blue are viable sites for phase 1. And in fact, represent, in our opinion, the 3 best options in all of Weathersfield. Okay, these are your top 3 sites. Stillman, Highcrest, which is really the north side of Highcrest where the soccer and baseball fields are, and Keisha Farm. Just to recap, this is Highcrest. We've rotated this 90 degrees just so it fits on the page a little better. So north is out to the Highcrest Road out here. You can see in the white rectangle the existing Highcrest building where we are speaking from tonight. And then you can see the swing school up in the northeast corner. It's northwest corner. It's oriented, it runs north-south just because of, we want to maximize its frontage so that we can get traffic on and off of Highland in a orderly way We want to create the deepest traffic loops that we can on site so that cars and buses aren't queuing onto Highland. And so the school then runs north-south across there, and we move around the wetlands. Here it is in 3D. And this is how we advised you we would score Highcrest North. In interest of brevity, I'll just recap the items indicated in red, which are areas of concern, not necessarily to eliminate it, but areas that we would have to continue to be diligent about if we selected this as the new school site. The first one is, we all know that the center of this parcel is wetlands. What we're depicting here are wetlands that are mapped on the town GIS. They are more or less approximate. When the referendum passes and you have real money to spend on a full and robust design, you would engage in a full survey and flagging of those wetlands to really determine the bounds and then the final shape and constraint that they represent. The orientation of this school isn't necessarily ideal. It matches Highcrest, which runs north-south, which means that the long east elevation and the long west elevations are exposed to the sun early in the morning and late in the afternoon. Highcrest is down in a hollow and has those deep overhangs, and not a lot of windows for that matter. So glare from early morning sun and late afternoon sun are less of an issue into the educational environment. This school is up at the soccer field elevation, and so we'll have to incorporate some architectural features to help control solar infiltration deep into the building. Primarily nowadays, because envelopes are so high efficient, that really has to do with glare. We don't want to put windows in the school and then have educators have to draw the blinds all the time. It's kind of a waste of money, but could also affect the overall energy performance because of heat gain early in the morning or late in the afternoon. Field count, we heard in our outreach to the community early on, every field in Weathersfield is well used and well loved. And this new school would consume the soccer fields and the baseball field that is up against Highlands. Now, once the whole building program is complete, Highcrest, this building could come down and you could build fields. You would not be able to recover tit for tat every field that you're supplanting up there, but you would be able to rebalance the field count to some extent. And lastly, constructability. You know, this is a tight site. You are building into kind of that pinch point between the wetlands and the property line, but nevertheless, a construction manager could sequence it in such a way that it is certainly doable. We are not presenting sites that are impossible to build on, right? We've eliminated those sites. Keisha Farm. So this drawing is oriented the same way as the previous one, so north is out towards Highcrest here. We've now moved across the street, and we're showing a school building that is on the upper field, the upper planted field, just to speak more clearly. There is a lower planted field that runs along Colliers that's about a story removed. This building, instead of being 2 stories at the classroom wing, will really appear 1 story because the understory is built into the landscape as the site falls away to the lower field along Colliers. The other distinction here with this building is that because of the configuration, we're able to get a bus loop around, and rather than doubling it back onto Highland, we can outlet it on Colliers. This is advantageous for a lot of things. For the school in perpetuity, it offers flexibility in how you bring vehicles to and through the site. In times of emergency, if something happens at this intersection, you can still access this intersection. And then certainly, during the period of time in this building's history, when students, when this is packed with Highcrest students and another neighborhood worth of students is in this building, a great deal of the bus traffic can be diverted out into Colliers and not get embroiled in the Highcrest Highland intersection. Just as a quick reminder, this too is the scoring that we presented to you. Again, it has a lot of the objective criteria that was in the previous chart, as well as a series of subjective criteria that we visited a year ago, or a couple months ago. And I just want to point out the issue that was flagged in red was that at that time, we were aware that there was an RFP about the master planning of this site that the town had issued. The town has since withdrawn that RFP to consider the multiple potential uses of this site. And perhaps it could be a school. I also want to point out, based on some public comment that we've heard since we've last presented this, I mean, there is a pretty good opportunity here to put a school in this location, gain fields for the town by building this field as part of the school construction grant here. You could knit this school into a series of open space and trails, as well as create a pretty good relationship between this school building, the fields, the Keisha barn that's over here, and some other, educational assets about agriculture, about growing, about the water cycle. All of those items could become a feature then of this corner of the complex. You also have a town presence in the old Keisha home as well, so that's potentially Park and Rec, I believe, so they could run summer programs through that facility too. So there's an interesting opportunity where you could do multiple things on in this area of town, utilizing the large acreage presented by the Keisha Farms, the existing fields which you're not touching, plus this other asset which is the Keisha barn that the town owns over here. That's the score sheet and summary that we reviewed before. So now I want to talk about sequence real quick. This is what we last discussed and what we just presented Monday night to the HDC. This was the scenario by which we started Stillman. We start construction in 2027. We moved to Webb. Then we put in Charles Wright, go to Emerson Williams, and then address the Highcrest building at that point in time. And then return back to Hamner to demolish it on or about January 1st, 2034. Given the concerns that we have with what it would take to get an approval on phase one, instead we're recommending this scenario. And the sequence, with the exception of phase one, all of this remains the same, okay? Whether we decide to build the new school on Keisha or on what I'll call Highcrest North, we would do that. As soon as we did that, this school's population would move into that new school building, and everyone at Webb would move in to this existing building. Webb would be renovated. Upon completion of that, every 5th and 6th grader in the district would go to Webb. And then the K through 4 students that are redistricted to Charles Wright would move into this building while their building is complete. That would be our recommended conclusion of referendum 1. That gives you a brand new school It gives you a new 5-6 intermediate school, and it addresses Charles Wright and right sizes, no pun intended, Charles Wright, which is between Webb and Wright. Those are some of your peak, statistically have some of your peak variations. It has the lightest population and class size. As that is wrapping up, we would urge you to consider a second referendum. To address three things. First, you have Emerson Williams out there. Then you have to address Hamner, and then you have to return to this site once it's empty and demolish it. And if the town wants to put fields there, you can. The nice thing about this is that it was clear to us in the comments from the HDC that there is a significant precedent to preserve a significant portion, if not all, of the Hamner exterior. That presents several design challenges. I'm an architect. I have a great deal of faith in the power of design to overcome just about any problem. And while that is certainly a variety of successful outcomes in renovating and adapting Hamner to the new K-4 program, I strongly suspect it will take a significant amount of time to really determine what is all involved in that. The HDC Commission correctly stated that they have a 65-day turnaround, but that's assuming that whatever architect you hire to do Hamner comes to that board with the exact right perfect solution, and they can approve it within 65 days. Until you have that exact right perfect solution, the clock simply continues to reset. So, referendum 2 is a ways out there, but we would recommend at this time that what the town might consider is hiring 1 or 2 architects at the successful passing of referendum 2 to design both schools simultaneously. Whether it's the same architecture team or 2 architectural teams, that's fine. Given that Emerson Williams will take more than a year just to get going and then a year to build, that will give Hamner plenty of time to clear that hurdle and can proceed in an orderly fashion. Construction on Hamner isn't going to start any sooner because of how kids have to cycle through everything. But once you know what you're doing and the town has come together to really weigh in on the value of Hamner and what can and can't be done with it, then construction can proceed in an orderly fashion, and the Hamner population can return to a fully renovated Hamner facility. So that's just a way to deal. It's just a way to help mitigate the risks and make sure that as successful as we want this referendum, this process to begin with phase 1, we want to finish equally strong, right? You want to be like South Windsor and Manchester at the end of these 10 years, standing back in front of the community and saying, we did what we said we were going to do. We finished on time and under budget. So that's just a way to help control those variables. And I think that is our recommended most likely path of success for the overall program. Just want to update you on phase 2 and 3, because we have been working on the things that we know that we can control. And we've got, these are hard to read, seeing them here instead of on my computer screen. But this is the existing web building, and we've diagrammed it out for downs for their pricing to clearly identify on the first floor all of the areas that are to remain, to be renovated and the areas to be removed and demoed and then reconstructed. I should mention that just because an area is remaining doesn't mean it's gonna look like that. A lot of this area does remain. For instance, the gym walls at Webb don't move, but this two-story classroom, with the exception of the corridor walls, just about every wall in that building is gonna be ripped out and replaced. Just as, Webb is the most statistically aberrant classroom environment you have. They have the smallest classroom, they have the largest classroom population on average. So we need to completely repartition the classroom environments in Webb in order to get equal-sized classrooms. That's paired with a set of drawings that clearly indicate renovated areas of Webb to remain, and by renovations, these are gut. Every system in the building will be replaced as part of this renovation, with the exception of perhaps the slab on grade and the actual roof deck. And then areas of new additions, so we're adding more, we're taking out the glass ramp ridge piece and adding a two-story classroom addition. So that's what a reconfigured 5-6 intermediate school will look like. This portion will, looks unchanged, but the auditorium is fully renovated, new seats, new acoustic treatment, new ceiling, new AV, new lighting, new IT, new stage curtain, whole thing. Cafeteria looks almost the same. We have to expand it into the courtyard because you have more kids going there. Gymnasium looks the same in this plan. New floor, new acoustic treatment, new basketball goals, whole thing. Media center, same thing. And then double-loaded classroom wing, double-loaded classroom wing. We've relocated administration here so that now they are really in the key position on the site. The administrators of Webb will be able to monitor directly all traffic coming and going onto the website, onto the site. And any visitors to the Webb school will go through that door, be credentialed before they're allowed entrance into the building. This existing patio and entrance where the administration currently resides will be a lovely front porch and patio where the STEM activities could spill out to, on a sunny day, and you can do an outdoor lab, or you can spill out into the courtyard. But that's not an accessible entrance, so it will no longer be a functional entrance for the school. More quickly, this is a reimagined Charles Wright. You'll remember, I'm sure, because you remember everything I've ever told you about all of these schools. The biggest challenge about the Wright site, besides its relatively modest frontage on Knott Street, is that lovely cafeteria and gym addition really chokes down that site even more. I mean, one, it's a big blank box, it sits on the road, but it really, there's just no front yard anymore for that school. So we tear all of that off and we rebuild it in back. And that allows a much deeper front yard to receive a bus loop, to receive a car loop. You also have a lot of interior classrooms without windows. And so we go back into these additions that were added at some point in time in the history of Wright, and we rip them out and we realign them with 3 classrooms, which is the size of the team of the reimagined K-4 academy. So we're able to create nice learning pods again in Wright that are based on your grades. And the media center, which appears like it's still there and it's untouched. Again, it does remain there, but it will be completely gutted and redone as part of the full renovation. As will the administration wing. We do add some classrooms back here just really to help, in ripping off the gym, we kind of, one of the greatest assets of Wright in our mind is that lovely front courtyard. And the gym constitutes one of those walls of the courtyard, so we don't want to just open that up to Knott Street. We still want to kind of wrap around and give it a nice little hug to try to close in that space. So that's why we put the other wing down there. So these drawings are being priced by Downs right now, so we're moving that along as an idea to help capture what it would mean to build this as phase 3 in 2029, 2030. So we're getting, when the time comes, we look forward to presenting that to you as well.
It's always very difficult to follow Michael in presentations.
I had my coffee.
I use a clicker in my notes. All right, so I just want to kind of go over where we are, snapshot in time of our overall schedule. So we've actually got 3 critical tasks and 3 critical components that we're working on. You heard that we're already starting to price up the Charles Wright and Webb scenarios to start cost modeling. We're also prepped and ready to start the grant application upon the revision to phase 1. So we've got that organized, ready to go, and we also have a very detailed schedule that is ready for the referendum process. And I do want to add that the grant application process would be the first of potentially 6 different applications. And once we get this process rolling, the recommendation would be for every June 30th of the following year, you would be submitting the grant application for the next school. And that flows in sequence with the schedule that Michael presented and the phasing that Michael presented. And the June 30th date is a fixed date established by the state of Connecticut that cannot move. So we have to adhere. That is what we call the critical path. That's what we're working towards. So in order to get to the grant application, the referendum becomes critical, and there are a number of approvals and resolutions that we need to bring forth to the Board of Ed and the Town Council. There's three critical approvals that we need. The first one being April 2nd, which is in a short amount of time, in 2 weeks. We've got to be prepared to bring a resolution for the approval of the building committee for this specific project. The state application and the grant process is very specific. It's critical in nature that we get all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So we have a very specific matrix, and we'll lead the team through this process leading up to a June 30th grant application deadline. We've already met with Michael Emmett. We've established a workflow. We've established a process. We've essentially got the grant application organized. We just really now need the answers to all the questions. Right? We are working on the cost model, and again, a short 2 weeks. We want to come back to the building committee and make a complete and comprehensive presentation of the cost for each location, each site, each school. That cost model will be complete. It'll be detailed site work, demolition, foundations, interior finishes, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. It'll be conceptual in nature, but it'll cover every aspect of the construction of the project. We will also include soft costs, which would be contingencies, design fees, bonding costs, furniture, fixtures, equipment, technology, a complete total project budget for each school. Our goal is to establish what we would consider the first referendum value. We also want to project the second referendum value. It's very difficult in our market these days to project construction costs. It's nearly impossible to project construction costs 8 and 10 years down the road. But we we want to at least advise the building committee and start to project what today, forecasting in the future, could potentially bring. That's one of the main reasons why the approach to this is to break it into 2 referendums. So we'll have a better opportunity of projecting the accuracy of these costs. And we've done that successfully in other municipalities and other towns, teamed up with TSKP, and we think we're gonna bring a good cost estimate for all 6 phases. Once we get that established, we wanna come back to the Board of Ed, and we wanna come back to the Town Council. So on April 22nd and May 5th, we want to do a presentation, explain the cost, explain where we are in preparation for the grant application, in preparation, more importantly, for the town referendum. The town referendum, I do want to add on May 13th, another very critical aspect of the application is the approval of the education specs. TSKP has already, rough drafted all of the ed specs, but now that we're really solidifying the sequence and the phasing of the schools, that will be finalized in the very near future, and it will be brought to the Board of Ed for final approval for phase 1 only. But the ed specs are also important for us as we cost model the other 2 schools. That'll help us understand, and it'll help us define the overall scope that will be included in these schools. As you heard Michael talk about some different programming and how some of these different spaces are beginning to start to envision. And then on May 19th, most importantly, we want to introduce the bond referendum. All right, that is a critical date because that falls right in line with the actual approval of the bond referendum. Oh, thought we had one more. Did we not put to June?
You can go back.
I'm sorry,
one,
back.
and you'll
Yep.
see June.
Yep. So June 16th is when that bond referendum gets approved with the cost of the project. And that ultimately is our final answer to the grant application question. The meeting minutes get approved the following week. That's our last upload to the state, and we've met our deadline. Right now, we're scheduling a potential September 23rd referendum date for the first referendum, which would be phases 1, 2, and 3.
Non-advocacy period, let's highlight that. June.
Yeah, so once the referendum is approved by the town council, immediately after that starts the non-advocacy period, where there's essentially a quiet period, where the members can no longer advocate for the project. At that point, it is out to the public. All the information is out there, and the PAC would then promote the program for the referendum vote. Okay? One last thing before we turn it over to Q&A. If you scan the QR code, that brings us to the website that we've prepared. That website, you can ask questions. There's frequently asked questions. There's some Q&A. A number of Q&A has already been populated. We are up to date as of March 21st. We've posted all of the approved meeting minutes through February, and now that I think we're approving the next round, that'll get updated as well. We've also updated and uploaded the presentations that TSKP and Downs has put together up to March 10th, up to the last meeting. So I just wanted to reiterate that is up there. It's there for transparency and for everyone to have an opportunity to ask questions and correspond. And with that, John, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, guys. So we are going to open to Q&A. We are recording this, and we have a computer set up here. So if you're going to ask a question, if you don't mind coming up to the microphone to ask a question, that would be great. Are there any questions in the crowd? Who would like to go first? Yes, ma'am. And please state your name and address as you would for public comment as well. Yes, please, if you could.
microphone.
I'm glad I'm not standing up there.
My name is Stephanie Waldman, 40 Oxford Street, Weathersfield, and I have a question about the tentative referendum date, because that is on Rosh Hashanah, the holiest day of the year. So that, to me, is, being Jewish, that's a little bit of a problem. Yes, I know I can do the absentee ballot, but that's gonna affect probably,
No.
I don't know what the population in town is, but that's something that should be looked at to change, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually realized that when, after we put the date down, and I actually looked at my calendar, and iPhone had it already in there, and that's why I kind of put tentative, just so we can make some accommodations. But probably roughly that week kind of makes sense. We were really thinking that after some of the open houses, for the schools would probably be a good time. Maybe more appropriately should have been like the week of. So a lot of things will come together in order to establish that date, but
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
Noted,
Thank you.
Michael's going to actually come around to the
Yeah, I'm
audience.
gonna do my
It's a little
game
easier.
show.
Michael, turn
Yeah, I'll also point out that actually, your architect, your cost estimator, not even this building committee sets the referendum date. That's an act of town council, so it's a recommendation at this point in time.
That's right.
And recommendation that will be revised.
There's a person behind you.
Can you just clarify, because you went through this a little fast, and
Say your
you might have
name,
said it the
address.
right way.
Marjorie.
Name and address, Marjorie.
Oh, Marjorie Carson, 12 Avalon Place. So if Highcrest, if a swing, a new school is built at Keisha or Highcrest North, I was under the impression that Highcrest literally cannot be the first school to move in, because there's just too many kids for this school to move into a 300-something school, and that Webb might need to be the first population to go to the new school just for that 1 year. Then we redistrict, so every elementary is 325 students, and then it can fit in the new school. Highcrest can. I just wondering if that is.
That's a good point. So what has changed since then is the inclusion of the full preschool program into the swing school. Because once Webb becomes a 5-6 academy, having preschoolers there just doesn't quite feel right. So the swing school now includes 5 additional classrooms. For preschool, they'll all have their dedicated toilet room, but the Highcrest students will be in there regardless, and then we'll be able to, once Webb then is redistricted, then it will free up the space again. Okay? It's a good question.
Mark Papa, 55 Black Birch Road. Couple questions. Have you guys considered using, there's a lot of technology out there for the Hamner School, instead of trying to protect the whole building, just use some technology to create a facade that kind of looked like it, just to build some features in, so you know it was Hamner, but it's really not Hamner anymore. They do that a lot. And then also, I had a question on soft costs. Once these schools are built, do you guys have estimates for what the soft costs are going to be for furniture, desk, and new planned property equipment, that type of stuff?
Both good questions. I would look forward to the opportunity to go back and renovate Hamner, and there's all sorts of techniques that we could use to make that work, really. And if not, I'll get one of my kids to become an architect and appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, the second question about the soft cost, we'll present breakdowns of each of these schools of the overall soft cost. An important component of that is complete, all new furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as technology, which is both the IT infrastructure, the AV infrastructure, wireless access points, security cameras, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are pretty good chunks of the budget and important features, but as part of a fully renovated facility, the state will participate in all new devices for the schools. So it's in the district's interest, even if, for instance, these Highcrest tables are perfectly usable, the district should redeploy them to the middle school and take advantage of the district's funding of new cafeteria tables. But, not to put words in Tom's mouth, but he will present those costs as lump sums for you to look at.
Robin Barassa, 248 Dale Road. I have just a couple questions. One is for the advisory building committee, and I'm not sure who actually sets the date for a referendum, but I'm curious as to why we would consider doing a referendum close to the last week in September when 5 weeks away is our November 4th elections. Standalone referendum with multiple polling places open is gonna cost minimum $15,000 to it's an expense the town has to pick up. And that falls on the residents and taxpayers. I'm not sure why we wouldn't wait a few more weeks to election day. And the other question and comment I have is, having gone or watched several of the building committee meetings, council meetings, Board of Ed, I know that Highcrest North was considered a non-issue, to take it off the table. Non-starter, thank you. It was quoted as saying as a non-starter, and all of a sudden, at the HDC, it was brought back on the table as a consideration. So I'm happy to see, that you're considering the other two options once again, but Highcrest North is considered really off the table and again, a non-starter. Now it's being considered on a small parcel of land like the Stillman property is. So I'm hoping that the bigger parcel of Keisha will be considered going forward.
Yeah. So, Robin, to answer your first question, we recommend the referendum date to the town council. That will be my answer from the building committee. To answer your second question, we were asked to reassess essentially all three. So we had the HCC meeting on Monday and this meeting today, and then we're gonna reconvene in very shortly to come up with a consensus as a collaborative unit to figure out what our next step is.
Christine Kelly Lasella, 37 Belmont Street. My question was similar. At the February 3rd meeting that was downstairs at the town hall with the building committee I attended, this got turned into 3 schools, and it was stated like, don't pay too much attention. But when the vote went around the table for the committee to vote on which site would be the swing school, Highcrest was taken off immediately. And it was Keisha or Stillman. Then I went upstairs to the council meeting, and Councilwoman Zambrello said, I think somebody brought it up, and she said that was a non-starter. It sits obliquely, things that you had said. So I guess very similar, that it was said twice, it was a non-starter. And I think it's an apple to an apple, but that's public comment.
Any other questions?
Well, no, public comment, I'm sorry. Please. Sign up.
Yeah, I mean, I basically just answered. I mean, I don't have any other answer other than we're just evaluating.
Well, that's the score sheet that she's referring to. And for Highcrest / Highcrest North, however you want to call it, there are more red categories, but all of the sites presented are viable swing school sites. And I think what the committee was doing was simply saying, well, of the 3, in the interest of expediency, we're going to drop that one off. Knowing what we know now, it's still worth considering. We're not presenting all the bad choices that we looked at. We're presenting the 3 best choices that you have.
First, I want to thank the committee for all that.
Name and address.
Nancy Jane Chill, 5 Jacob Drive. You're showing the school that's on the south side. I have a question for the committee. If they considered how many curb cuts there are on that
because I have grandchildren that go to that school and they ride their bike and they walk to my house. And how many crossing guards would you need for all those driveways to, I counted, I think 5 or 6. All those driveways would have to have crossing guards for those kids to walk. Going to
Chris
the
North?
bike.
She said
So
south,
my
south
question
Keisha.
is, did you consider
Oh,
looking
okay.
at
South side of Highland.
Well, it's a good
South
point,
side.
and it does have to police, and the crossing guard, your current crossing guard at High Crest does a lot of heavy lifting during this peak.
Kids can walk without crossing a driveway. They can come right up the sidewalk.
Yeah.
and go right to one crossing guard. Here I count 1, 2, 3, 4 at least.
Yeah, I understand
Plus
that.
the ones that are already there.
Right. High Crest has, the existing High Crest has this curb cut here and the curb cut here, and
Kids can walk on the sidewalk. They don't have to-
I hear you. I get it. Okay.
Charles Wright.
I think we had a question.
Right.
I can answer this.
Charles Wright has the same thing.
Eva Kiminowski,
She's saying it.
34 Deer Ledge Lane. I'm a little late to the game, so I'm sorry if these are silly questions, but from like the 3 options you guys kind of gave, is it like one of them has to be chosen and that's it? And the second question is about the money. Like, is the money already put aside for this? And it's the same for whatever 3 we choose, kind of?
Let him, you can, that's a, name and address now.
Thanks, Kaz.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so of the decisions that I believe the building committee feels good about is that the first phase of this multi-phase endeavor is the building of a swing school. So a site does need to be chosen. And it is our opinion that these are your 3 choices after months of visiting this. No money has been appropriated yet. That will be tied to some form of a referendum this board will recommend to the town council and hopefully will take place in September. And hopefully will be successful. At that time, then the grant application that the Board of Ed will have already filed will move through the process and a construction grant be awarded to the town for phase 1, okay? And then money can be bonded. This will be a 10-year process.
It was me, I'm sorry. Can I just tag on? Can you explain a little bit why a swing school is something we need to think about?
The building committee has considered a range of options of how to address comprehensively all 5 elementary schools, and has deemed the extent of renovation at each school so significant that doing work in those schools while students are trying to learn would not be the best investment of the town's educational dollars. So we need to create a new school to move kids through while their home schools are being renovated.
Henry Adams from Oxford Street. I'm wondering why we're doing all 5 schools instead of making the 3 schools a little bit larger to accommodate the students. It seems like millions can be saved by condensing into 3 schools instead of 5. And I'm next to Charles Wright, and I would be happy if we took that one off and condensed it.
He's the only one.
I know.
I appreciate that comment completely because economically, I believe it's correct. I will candidly, I think I had too much caffeine tonight. I will just candidly say that you are somewhat of an anomaly as we move through the community, in that a lot of people have told us, wow, it would be great if we could consolidate, just don't take my neighborhood school. And that, as human beings, we can also understand that sentiment as well. And we did look at those scenarios, and you can go online and look at some of those cost estimating for those scenarios, and you can see the extent to which they yield, that the cost is less. But I will also reiterate that what this committee has urged us to do is consider the value to the community more than as much as we consider cost. And frankly, this committee has landed on the idea that these neighborhood schools have value to the Weathersfield community, and that is worth the extra costs that may be associated in maintaining students at those sites.
The only thing I could say is,
Way too much caffeine.
Too much coffee, Mike.
Seniors haven't been engaged in this because they're not tech savvy. I talk to many seniors and they just don't know what's going on. And that could, when the referendum comes up, they could vote it down, but just based on the cost. You know,
I think anyone who participated in the 22 referendum is acutely aware of that. And we've seen each other around, so I know that you're involved, and you know that we're trying to get the building committee out there. We're doing everything we can. We really are. Okay?
Hi, Kim Miller, 49 Old Post Road. So I worked on the previous referendum, so we wanted to get rid of Charles White, obviously, that's why we're here. So ultimately, who is deciding, I know it's very short because it's April 7th, but how do we go from here to these three choices when last week, it was all Stillman? Who's choosing this final site in this next 2 weeks?
Oh, me?
What is the preference? What is the preference?
So the building committee will decide. Look, this is, it's our recommendation to the town council ultimately, right? They are ultimately the holders of the decision. This building committee will make their recommendation. We were asked to reevaluate all three sites again by our town leadership. The democratic process of this entire referendum is what's been playing out here. And I thank the public for that. They've opened up the door for us to have conversations with the HTC. And we are now in the process of doing this meeting here today. And you're gonna hear very soon in new business that we are gonna reconvene and try to reconvene very quickly based on that schedule to make that ultimate recommendation to town council. And that's where our recommendation will be made, sir.
And we're not starting from scratch, right? I mean, I really believe that you have three choices, and this committee has looked hard at those three choices, so.
There's someone behind
Somebody.
you.
Hi, Matt Cooper, 120 Highland Street. And I apologize, I had softball practice tonight, walked in 10 minutes late. So if you already covered this, please let me know. But if we're gonna reconsider the Highcrest site, I'm curious what the issues might be with recapturing or taking the abutting land at Keisha Farm, to orient that school more appropriately and have more land. And if we're concerned about the Keisha supporters, instead of demolishing the barn, pick it up and move it across the street. So I'm just curious if those options were considered.
We've looked at it in our office just to see what it would take to do that, and I'm not sure that it still works quite as well, particularly with the issues of topography because of how everything shifts between the Keisha Barn site and the soccer fields. We probably have to raise the soccer fields. We already have a persistent problem with some of the elementary schools with significant level changes and mitigating that. It would not be our recommendation to encumber the swing school with moving the Keisha Barn site in order to access the additional width of the property. That would be my recommendation. If the building committee wants us to look at it more, we'll look at it more and try to figure it out.
Hi, Tom Carson, 12 Avalon Place. It's a little distressing to me, this is a short comment, that I live in Old Weathersfield, and some of the negative momentum, I think, that has led to this flipping of Handler and Highcrest.
We can't hear you.
It's distressing to me that the negative momentum by neighbors of mine in Old Weathersfield has forced Handler 10 years into the future. And it got some laughs, when you talk about kid being an architect, and maybe he can take care of it. But question I have is, the order of schools, why can't Hammer go in phase 3 and hire architects for all 3 projects in the first referendum at the very beginning, and start working on Hammer so we get that school done quicker?
Something that can be considered.
My name is Johnny Mordassen, 7 Springdale Road, and I just wanted to ask if you can again clarify the sites that are being considered, because just from some of the side conversations I'm hearing for the swing school site that's happening right now, people seem to be still confused. So what would and I want to ask the board, or maybe council, what would the motion actually be for the vote to decide the swing school?
Sure.
I'll take the first one down.
Yeah, the second one.
Okay.
Take them both.
So the 3 sites are this one, this is High Crest Road, this is Highland Street, this is the existing High Crest School where we're standing right now. These are the soccer fields. The baseball diamond is right here. Keisha Barn is here. So that's site 1. Site 2 is directly across the street. So we just looked at a building drawn right here. This is the Keisha Homestead. This is Collier Road. So there's a large upper field right here, and then the whole site sort of falls down diagonally down to Collier Road here. So we're talking about building at the high point of this site, and then potentially putting recess and recreational fields down low along Collier's. And then the other site is the Stillman parcel. I think I actually have it here.
There we go.
So this is in Old Weathersfield. This is Standish Park, Mikey's Place, Moore's Garden, Knott Street. This is the existing BOE building. This is the existing Hamner site with its parking lot, and the let's call it the Standish Field, which is the baseball diamond, is right here. Those were the 3 viable sites. Your second question is, what will the actual motion be considered by the committee?
You didn't want to answer that? Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. So, hey, Johnny, so the exact wording, gonna have to not speak tonight because I'm gonna have to actually get the right wording. But it would be essentially to amend the recommendation prior to me being chair on this, that this committee made for the swing space. So the wording of it essentially would be to amend based on a potential new spot or not. We are gonna have that public discussion first.
Looking over John's shoulder, I see someone circulated a sign-up sheet for public questions. Is everyone getting a chance?
Did you want to add your name? Sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna add my name to the list.
That's public comment.
That's public comment.
This is public comment.
Yeah, for public
Okay.
comment.
Yeah, go ahead. If you hand that to her,
That's
Mike,
different.
thank you.
Any other questions? I'm gonna go here.
Thanks. Bob Janes, 20 Belmont. I just want to verify, since these went through, so Stillman, so quick preface, I know people in this town like their fields. We had a referendum recently that, didn't go so well because of fields. So Stillman, for the next 10 years, so give me yes or no, Stillman, next 10 years, if they build a swing school there, we would lose a field and then maybe gain one back in 10 years.
Yes.
Okay. Highcrest, we lose multiple fields in the next 10 years and possibly get them back, but not in parity.
Yes.
Okay. Keisha, good. Keisha, we maybe, I know it says, so we don't lose any fields, but we might get one, plus you mentioned woodland stuff in the back trails, but not a field, one field.
You would gain fields
Gain
with
fields.
Keisha Farm.
Got it, okay. And there's still that one across the road, but that's Highcrest.
Those would remain unaffected by
Perfect.
swing school construction.
Thank you.
You can
ask questions all night.
That was well done.
So I just wanted to see, because I haven't been driving around this area in a long time. Marjorie Carson, 12 Avalon Place, sorry. One of the considerations for this particular one that was a negative was that you'd have two roads coming out in the same place, like, you know, where it's not, you want to separate the bus traffic from the car traffic, and it seems like they're all coming out in Highland. Would it be possible to come out, go straight, see where that arrow goes, the yellow arrow, to do a busway that goes all the way down and up on Highcrest Road? Kind of like what you're doing with the Keisha property.
Climb the hill.
I know it goes uphill, but I was just curious if that was a possibility.
It's
That would be
possible,
for
it's
snow.
just for the, and maybe an important feature to have in perpetuity, once High Crest is demolished, just to give you another access from another public right of way, that's a good idea. But certainly while High Crest is occupied and kids are in that building, it just really complicates that High Crest Highland intersection. So, you know, essentially, all the High Crest kids are really just gonna wanna, the dismissal times will be staggered, but you'll want to disperse that traffic as quickly as possible and try not to overlap. Anyone Q&A? Matt?
Steve Kelly, Old Smithy Lane. I didn't want you to run away, Mike, because I think this involves you. Come back. Concerning the 5-6 school, I've always been curious as to whose idea it was. At first I said, well, it makes sense to the Board of Education. And they said, no. And I said, well, it can't be the building committee. So I did find an article in the Rare Reminder where the council liaison, quote you, saying that you sort of scared them off, that you're not going to get reimbursed because the school's too big, you have an auditorium and whatnot, so you're definitely not going to get money to do over the auditorium. I just don't think that's a great idea for changing that into a 5-6 school. You know, you're thinking you're saving some money, but now you're gonna have buses running all over town, bringing 5th and 6th graders up to the school. And I don't know if that was a serious discussion with the building committee, but, you know, maybe they'll name it after you.
I'll name it after one of my kids, I'm sure, but I think, I'll be very candid with you, the notion of a 5-6 academy or some sort of intermediate school was written into the RFP that we responded to. So it predates TSKP or Downs involvement. It comes from, I think, a pedagogic or educational movement recognizing that 6th graders learn very differently than kindergartners. And if you go around this region and look at some of your peer towns, I think you'll recognize that the K-6 model is less common across your peer towns. The Rare Reminder is misquoting me. I didn't say you will not get reimbursed. I would say that it is a space waiver to do that. And certainly,
The other thing is, are you positive that the state would consider that a junior high? I mean, it's not guaranteed that it's not a 6th grade school.
It's a 5-6 academy.
no, I don't mean to cut you off. I get the spirit of your question, so I understand where you're headed, and because you weren't mic'd and for the benefit of the rest of the crowd, are we sure that the state will consider that a junior high? In other words, worthy of an auditorium? The short answer is yes, because we'll write it into the ed spec that way. The educational specification, which says, this is what the town wants to do, this is the population that we're teaching, and this is the recipe of spaces that we need to deliver this educational program to these 5th and 6th graders. What the state won't do anymore, unless you appeal to them, as part of a renovation, is fund the renovation of a dedicated auditorium for elementary students. That's why most schools in this state have a cafetorium or a gymatorium at the elementary level. That's not because that's a preferred, every principal wants an auditorium large enough that every parent can attend the holiday concert. Very few principals get that. And if you tear down that auditorium at Webb, you will never get it back to an elementary educational program. That, you can quote me on.
I just also wanted to add, so I'm also happen to be a member of the Board of Education, so I want to bring you way back to last year. That recommendation came out of one of our subcommittees and ultimately through the Board of Ed for a 5-6 academy. Like Michael said, there is a lot of, it's long-winded, I won't do it here, but there's a lot of benefits to a 5-6 academy, and the Board of Ed agrees that that's the direction we want to go.
Questions?
Hi, I'm Phil Peterson. I live at 29 Harvest Hill. And the first thing I can say is the idea of a 5 and 6 academy is not new. In fact, the town was talking about it 25 years ago when my kids were younger. They're all through the schools now. And in fact, I'm a product of the Wethersfield schools too. This is where I started elementary school. So,
Does it still look the same?
no, but my picture is still on the class picture is still on the wall. It is pretty close. And I haven't taken a tour yet, so I'm gonna do that. I think, back to topic, the idea of putting the swing school on the Keisha Farm property makes tremendous sense to me, simply because it's brand new land. You don't lose any fields. The town can probably widen Highland Street and Collier Road if necessary as well to help with some traffic.
Just gonna make the cars go faster.
I want to extend thanks to the committee, just because this is a difficult job. We're a tough crowd in this town, and thank you.
I'll let that comment sink in.
She had her hand raised. And then there's, Scott Mons has his hand raised.
Amy DeVoe, 89 Hartford Avenue. I've asked this question a number of times after the first meeting that we had, that you spoke and you put forward that you thought that Keisha was the best area. And since then, it really hasn't been mentioned, and Stillman was a go. Were you advised to stay away from Keisha?
No, okay.
I mean, I appreciate what you guys are doing and all your time. I just, over this time, I've asked this question time and time again. Why not Keisha? And everybody skirts the question.
Well, I'll retrace the steps exactly. This was a summary of a lot of data that we had collected about all the schools and all the sites. And with the exception of that bottom block, pretty much everything above that line is objective criteria. It's, even in this town, it's pretty hard to argue about everything above that bottom block. From that, we drilled down to this, and we expanded that bottom block into a much longer set of more subjective, designerly or construction technology criteria. And then we collectively, Downs and TSKP, scored with the color code.
And the red box,
Yeah.
is, it may interfere with future plans there.
But you have to put yourself in the mind of several months ago when there was an RFP out to consider all the possible uses of Keisha Farm, and that RFP was withdrawn. That strongly indicates to this team, the town is not resolved on the future of Keisha Farm. And it is our opinion that when you build a school there, it's gonna be there for 50, 60, 70 years, full stop. So we put a color code there. We put a lot of color codes on Keisha. It's a great site. So is Stillman. So is High Crest.
Correct. But like you said, for High Crest, you said that it's a small parcel. High Crest.
It's constrained.
Yes. And Kaisha, you have acreage that we're only gonna use 5 or 6 acres.
Yeah, I think that's reflected there.
Correct.
Okay.
Hamner is only 5 acres.
And Stillman is 6 acres. At the time, we thought we could then demolish Hamner at 5 acres. That's 11 acres. That's pretty good. Okay.
Right, yeah, no, but at the meeting you said to us that the baseball field probably, it's not a definite. You said, if there's money left at the end.
Well, I don't know if I ever. Okay, all right, well, you know, it's possible I was equally over caffeinated. Okay, that's fine.
Michael.
Okay,
That's good.
all right. That's, yeah, all right, okay.
I'm making my way over.
That's fine. Oh, it's Scott. Scott Wands, 12 Avalon Place.
Scott Wands, 4 Avalon Place. I appreciate all the work you've done. I think it will be helpful because I think a lot more people are getting involved now. If you just reiterated the timeline, when you guys started, how many public meetings you had, how many listening sessions. I know you've done a lot of work, but I think it will be helpful to reiterate all the work that went into the recommendations that you're presenting tonight and the timeline that you took to get there.
We were hired in September. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
Kind of blurry to me. We've had at least one meeting a month, often multiple meetings a month. If you go to the website, you'll see all of the other stakeholders that we've met with along the way as part of our community outreach, ranging from the various schools' PTOs, town professional staff, the senior center, the moms of Weathersfield, Chamber of Commerce, etc. That was more in the information gathering section. So I'm kind of at a loss to catalog it all, but we've been on this since September. We were able to leverage a lot of the data collection that was done as part of the 2022 referendum. So I will say that this has moved quickly compared to a town that's starting from scratch, because we didn't, for instance, have to completely reconsider the demography and enrollment statistics of your town. We kind of knew that your population was steady and growing a little bit at the elementary school population. It's hard to give you an exact answer. I would refer you to the website. You can go through all the steps. Oh, well, okay. I think many of these people have been at all the meetings. They've been along for the ride, so they can tell you too.
Kevin Timbrow, Longview Drive. Just a couple clarifying questions. I'm a numbers guy, so just to clarify, the numbers underneath the names there, low, bad, high, good? Is that how I should read those? Like
Acreage.
the ratings?
Oh, that's acreage of the sites. That's the Stillman site is 6.15
Okay.
acres.
Do you have a slide that shows the ratings that you guys
Oh,
put forward?
yeah. I'll take the mic back just so everyone can hear. Was that the extent of your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see the ratings.
Yeah, we didn't do that, and that is, I think, frustrated some members of your community that we didn't tell you, we didn't advise the building committee that one of these sites is 2 points higher than the other one. Because what we did is we gave, particularly on the subjective criteria, that lower block, we gave a color-coded rating, but it really, that is our professional opinion about that quality, but it is not, in our opinion, our role to tell this town that they should value constructability over fields. It's kind of a lame comparison, but for instance, it's really this community's decision to assign a weight to each of those categories and then come up with a determination from there. And that's what they did once, and now they've been asked to revisit it. Does that?
Yeah.
I know you're a numbers guy, and that doesn't give you a score. Yeah, well, it's a simple color code. That's about as sophisticated as we got on it. Recognizing that it is subjective, and ultimately it's this board's charge to make the best comprehensive plan for the town of Weathersfield. Okay?
What's that?
You didn't have your hand up, right?
No.
Hi, Holly Keenan, 318 Church Street. My son's a first grader at Charles Wright in a classroom with no windows. So I was wondering, at any of these swing sites, will there be windows in all of the classrooms?
Good question.
Yes.
Sounds wonderful. She's like, sold.
You can ask.
These two.
Thank you. Patricia Carroll, 34 Chesterfield Road. Thank you very much for having this informational discussion. I appreciate your diligence. I appreciate all the questions. Every time I attend something, I learn something new I didn't know before. So you all, thank you for your patience. Small question, what does RFP actually stand for?
Good question.
That's request for proposal. So while I've always been a fan of Weathersfield, we were not aware of this effort until the town advertised for services to assist the building committee in assembling a comprehensive plan. So we submitted our qualifications and made a proposal, and they had the good sense to hire us.
Any other questions?
Great. What's next on There's one in the back.
Douglas Ovian, 56 Broad Street. I wanted to say that maybe because the meeting with the Historic District Commission just took place a couple days ago, it's hard to appreciate just how much was accomplished that day in terms of what would happen on a project there, because that was the first discussion. I think it's reasonable to think that you would be able to accomplish what should happen at that school, put it at stage 3. So it might be worth considering. Someone else mentioned that earlier as well. I was also going to ask if at one point I asked in an earlier meeting if the footprint that's going to be necessary for the expansion of pre-K at all of these schools eventually could be identified in some way, so we would know where it would likely be. You know, at that meeting the other day, there was no reference to the fact that the Stillman option would likely require an addition for pre-K eventually, if it were dispersed throughout the town. And there was talk that Hanmer itself is oversized, so it needs to have some part of it taken down, when in fact it might need to be expanded later. So I think those factors are something that's in play and is worth keeping the townspeople aware of. Just like the idea that part of the reason I did 5-6 was preferred is because right now kids spend 7 years in their elementary school, and with pre-K they would be spending 9 years there. So I think that's part of what has driven things up until now. My last question or comment about this is there any chance that the process that we are undertaking is making the renovations more expensive than they have to be? for instance, the changes to Hammer, many times in the district, people come in with big ideas, and then they end up stripping back to something more like great new finishes, and living with a lot of the footprint you have. And I'm wondering if keeping Hammer a little bit bigger and Charles Wright a little bit smaller, so that they're complementary in size to each other, might serve both properties well, and overall make them more like Emerson Williams and Webb in terms of renovations. And the last thing I want to say is, I think it would be great if Western Weathersfield could have a brand new elementary school, and that's, I think, the reason why Kaisha is considered a plan. But today, this is a beautiful room to be in.
All right, so that was a lot of thoughts, and I'll respond to the question portion of that for the Board of Ed and for the committee. One of the first things we did was we went out and established essentially what is the maintain only, what is the minimum requirement of each of these schools, just to keep them running for the next 20 years. And you go on the website and you can look at that value. That is the minimum amount. And that doesn't buy a new stick of furniture, doesn't build a new space, doesn't even paint the existing classrooms. That's the floor, and we even modeled how much the state would participate in that and what the ultimate cost to the taxpayer was. That's in the past, because this committee has decided while that cost is low, it does not represent the value that Weathersfield wants to bring to the elementary schools.
I absolutely agree with that.
The second thing that they looked at was what is the value of maintaining disparate sized educational facilities across the district. And they decided that that is not a value, that this referendum will help bring equanimity across the K-6 environment in its totality, both in classroom size, the quality of classroom environments with windows, the number of students per classroom, and the overall size of the school. Full stop. That was the decision that has been made up till now. So, that's where we are. Question?
Yes, question. Currently, Barbara Rue, 79 Main Street. Currently, the ABA programs, the autism and special ed programs are housed in Webb. And I believe all the children that are in that program are in that school. So the question is, are we going to spread them out among the elementary schools? Or perhaps if Hamner's just a little bit too big, would they be housed there? Because that is a slightly different circumstance.
No, I agree with that. There's actually special programs both at Webb and Hamner in particular, so we do have to pay specific attention to that. The other thing to acknowledge is those programs statistically are growing in population. They are not remaining fixed. So those are stitched into the educational specifications that the Board of Ed is reviewing. I'm going to leverage your question to also respond to the additional comments. Yes, Hamner's oversized. One nice thing about splitting the referendum up into a couple of different moves is you're not committing to a full cost of the program 10 years out. So this town, on the success of 3 new school facilities, can pivot their priorities and perhaps make improvements for the remaining schools. If you want to expand pre-K at that time, you can do that. If you want, like the town of Weathersfield did in their last 3 schools, to say, yes, not only do we want the school, but we want these to be net zero, you can do that as a community. You can build that value in as the second referendum. If you want to go back and at that point in time distribute pre-K, you can do that as part of that decision making. If you bond everything all at once, or you move Hamner up, you're boxing yourself in with the options that you have.
Crystal Coca-Cola, 62 Kimberly Lane. My question is,
has the building committee met with members of the town council and, or is there a plan to prior to, recommendation being made to answer their questions that they have?
So we do have a liaison normally from the town council to the building committee, Emily Zambrello, who is not unable to attend tonight. So she obviously relays all the information from building committee meetings to the town council. But we will present, as in the schedule that was presented by Tom, all of the recommendations that came out of this committee to them. I believe it's, what was April, what was the date again, Tom? May?
April 7th.
April 7th. No, that was BOE.
No, April 7th, town council.
Town council.
No, April 7th for the.
April 7th was the resolution. BOE, the 22nd of April, and then May 5th,
again, that's the
the
plan,
comprehensive plan with cost money.
Yeah, the other thing I'll
Yeah.
say is we don't make a formal.
We've been on the agenda and we've answered questions to the council. The former chair presented at least twice to the council
And
throughout the process.
And the Board of Ed as well, before I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, so if these, or was it Mike, but, the chair of this committee has made regular reports, both to Board of Ed and Town Council. Anyone who's come in to make public comments to those boards along the way, will recognize that has happened. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
360 chair.
Katie Kratzer, 17 Meadowgate. My question is, what happens to the school that moves to the swing site? So if we build at Keisha or we build at Stillman, and Hanmer and Highcrest are the two worst schools in the worst condition currently, with rain falling around there and all over the parts of the building. What happens? Are there going to be renovations made because you're going to be filtering other schools through here for 10 years? So are you putting money into these schools while you're building all these other schools or renovating them? That's question one. Question two is, I haven't said this in a meeting, but I've said it in PTO meetings and in our own school, but mailers should have already gone out. There are a lot, some of them there already mentioned it tonight, there are a lot of people in this town that still don't know anything that's happening. And that falls on this building committee, the town council, the Board of Ed, our leaders. You need to be making everybody informed of what is happening. There are a lot of people that have no social media, don't pay attention to emails, don't have email. Every taxpayer needs to know.
So the first part, thank you for all of that. The first part was a question, so I'll respond to that. The schools will need to be maintained, while in this facility, for instance, if we build either on the soccer fields or across the street, as the swing populations come in and out of here, so they'll have to be maintained. The quality of this environment will more or less be as it is today, but they will be maintained.
Hi, Carrie Hill, 117 Randy Lane. I just had a message from a friend who had to leave this meeting. She went on your website for the Q&A page, and she was just wondering, is there another place where anybody in this town could go and write comments, not questions?
Send an email to town council.
What is it, the right reader, or what was the?
Not the rare minds.
The rare
Minds are
minds.
I mean, I would suggest, writing an email to the Board of Ed and Town Council, and then they'll forward it to me as well, and I can respond to those emails as well. Any other questions? More questions? All right.
Somebody,
One more question, Michael. Hold on. And hold on to that mic, because I'm going to have you give it to the public commenters.
I'm just realizing that I left my phone at the table, so I'm not getting credit for any of these steps.
I'm so sorry to bother. I was
was just trying to cross-reference against the website so that I didn't, ask something completely dumb. It's just going to be a wee bit dumb, because I wasn't at all the previous meetings. So, looking from this great distance, I noticed, I think it looks as though you just have one elementary school design, and you've copied and pasted it on a bunch of different spots. According to the what it looks like. Right. So when we talk about why Highcrest has that red thing, was it considered at all? And again, there's no topographical lines on any of the renderings on the website. Is it possible to just move Highcrest where the, where the parking lot is, and switch where the parking lot and Highcrest are? Because it looked as though they would fit on your drawings. Wow, that's terrible, sorry. And otherwise, and it's just, or making something that is more sensitive to the site and then eliminates the problem of the north-south that, you were saying that was a drawback for Highcrest. Yeah, and then on the second one, I don't know, it's a different can of worms. The gentleman over there talked about the different fields. And I suppose none of this takes into account the possible field origami that could be, avoided if Keisha does become actual fields that are not made out of plastic, because I think that was part of the problem with referendum. So yes, summary: orientation and the specific design of the schools that are sensitive to the site, and Keisha Farms. There we go.
Can we just have a name and
All right.
name and
Name and
address?
address.
Michael,
We
we
need
need
a
a name and address.
Oh, sorry. Marcia Sheldon, 304 Hartford.
Hey, hey, hey,
So, let's see, in order, I think, from the top, these are essentially the same diagram of a school. That is correct. And that's because it's a pretty good diagram for K-4 elementary school. No offense. And Highcrest and Stillman have the advantage of more or less being flat over the building pad that we are intending to build on. Stillman is slightly, Keisha, excuse me, is slightly different in that we would be building a lower story here as the grade falls. But the overall organization and flow of that elementary school makes good sense to us. I'll also just point out that until you successfully pass the referendum, you haven't hired an architect to design anything. I think that we have correctly identified the only viable building pad on the Highcrest parcel if Highcrest is to remain occupied. So the idea of building on the parking lot around Highcrest while Highcrest is occupied isn't really a prudent thing to do.
She means the new parking lot.
The new park, oh, to flip here.
So,
Oh.
the question of orientation, and you've just got the one,
Yeah.
then maybe, you could just turn the classrooms around, and then orientation would be a problem.
Right, and then all the circulation has to go to the rear of the property, so you start to have something more akin to Charles Wright or Emerson Williams, which is significantly constrained by the front yard. I guess that's what I would say about that. Well, it's still a good idea. I mean, there's a lot of architecture in there that I'll defend, but this is somewhat of how elementary schools are done, just to bring the circulation to the front and bring all the cars and all the buses to a single entry point at the front of the school so that the comings and goings can be monitored easily and securely. And this is a way to achieve that on the site. If you spun it 90 degrees, put the parking in the back, you could probably do that. You could build it for approximately the same amount-ish that Downs is going to tell you phase one is going to cost.
I feel like there was another piece in there. Can you help me?
She said, putting it.
Orientation.
Oh, fields.
And then fields, yeah.
Fields, okay. Whatever you do with Keisha Farms, if you don't do the swing school, you can do, you just can't use a state grant school construction grant to do it. And that's what you've hired us to help advise this building committee to administer. So the town can undertake any field construction program it wants under some other mechanism. I guess I would just caveat that. When you decide to build a swing school on Keisha Farms, you can write into the ed spec that you want a field. And the state of Connecticut, under the school construction grant, will give Weathersfield 60 cents on the dollar for the construction of that field.
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. All right, Michael, hold on to that, because what I'm going to have you do, and you might want to take your phone so you can get the steps this time, because when we get to public comment, I'm actually going to have you hand the microphone to the person. Next on the agenda, new business. So does anybody have anything for new business, committee-wise? No. Okay.
Does the committee have any questions about it? No, I'm kind of serious there. I mean, we ran through a lot of stuff there.
So the only item I have is next steps, right, from where we are today. So we did the HTC meeting on Monday. Obviously, thank you most for coming. And then, of course, we're doing here tonight. Again, thank you all for your dedicated time to this. I'm going to ask for more time because based on the schedule that Tom provided, we have to keep moving forward, right? Let's keep having progress. So I'm going to suggest that you all gather your thoughts from these last two meetings, and if we can reconvene on Monday, this coming Monday the 31st. I believe Town Council Chambers is open, Sally, is that correct? At 6 p.m. And that would be where we would discuss openly, right, our thoughts on reconvening and reassessing the three sites.
And we will post that.
And we will post that tomorrow if we all can make that meeting, that is. So, is that an issue for anyone? Amanda's looking at me.
I'll make my husband do some work. It'll be fine.
Doug, you're all set?
Husbands are the unsung hero of all.
Oh, sure. Thank you for saying that after my laugh.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get that information out. It'll be addressed in the public as well.
And John, it's just a
Yes.
regular public meeting like we've been having.
But this will be a special meeting.
This will be a special building
Special-
committee meeting, sorry,
yeah.
let me make that clear. A special building committee meeting for us to address the
Yeah.
the reassessment of the three swing spaces.
Six.
And then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yep, agenda to follow. Any other questions on it? Okay. Public comment. So we have a list. And I believe Judy Keene has been waiting patiently as number one.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Judy.
I don't know if standing's better, but.
It is.
I really came tonight
Oh, name and
Oh, I'm
address.
sorry.
Name and
Judy
address.
Keene, 126 Broad Street.
Oh, good.
I really came tonight to disavow the Hammer site, the Stillman Field site. I just think that would be a terrible, terrible choice. And if it's still on the table, I'll continue to vent about that. I just think it's a dangerous place to have construction going on. Old Weathersfield doesn't have many open spaces now, and you're gonna be divided, one possible field in half. So it really, does not accomplish what everybody would like to have done. I think with Mikey's place and Laura's garden there, it would make just plain chaos. Plus, I have to put a dig in for the 5Ks that go out from there. You know, we all leave from Hanmer School or thereabouts in Stillman Field and have the celebrations afterwards of the winners. So, and there's many now coming up in Old Weathersfield. It's now a place in bloom. Everybody wants to be in Old Weathersfield. The other thing that I did not hear tonight, that if Stillman Field was chosen, there would be an archaeology dig, correct?
Yep.
Yes, so that could take forever. I mean, the Webde and Stevens, they found a bunch of stuff, so it went on and on and on. So that would delay everything. I think that Keisha is the very best option. And I don't know why it wasn't number one on the list, because it's virgin soil, there's nothing there that has to be torn down, no fields that are gonna be dismissed. And if Keisha is chosen, there's gonna be fields all over town now that can be usable. And once the Highcrest School is demolished, eventually, there's more possibility of fields there. So I think the field solution would be to do Keisha. Somebody mentioned seniors, and I just have to address that. You know, schools are vacant in the evening, in the early evening hours. This schools should actually serve the entire population. And I think having senior programs in the schools and allowing seniors, you know, there's a gym there. Seniors might like to use the gym. So don't dismiss seniors. And the idea of a 5-6 school, I absolutely love. Having had 5 boys, you know, they don't belong in the lower grades and they don't belong with the upper grades. So they are a unique group. So, thank you.
I forgot to mention, public comments are to 5 minutes. Judy, you were under 5 minutes, you're
Oh,
good.
good.
State your name and address before you speak, which you did, so you're good, you didn't get in trouble. I believe it's cursive writing, Carol, I believe is next. Okay.
Hi, I'm Carol Bruce. I live on Stillman Walk, but I spent 44 years on Hartford Avenue. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't go past it or in it. It's the most passive and beautiful place, the park that is there at the end of Hartford Avenue. As such, Judy has said so much, I don't need to repeat it. But I will add one more thing that is near and dear to my heart. Once you build it, please, let's maintain it this time.
100%.
Forgive me, I cannot read this name. I'm going to ask somebody on the committee if they can.
It's me.
Jean,
Oh,
sorry.
Just go right down the list.
Mesereau,
I'm sorry, Jean.
I'm here also to thank the committee for all you've gone through, because I can see how it's changed since the last couple of meetings I've been. But I really encourage you to go with building that one school, use that new piece of land that you have at Keisha, right?
Yeah.
You're getting more fields, and I'm an avid walker, and I recently moved to Old Weathersfield, and I walk by a Standish block every day, probably 5 out of 7 days, and at all different times of the day. And it's a beautiful park of activity. There's always something going on. It might not be totally crowded, but they're playing basketball. Mikey's place is busy today. So they're kicking a soccer ball around on the field. Maybe they're just throwing a football. I've seen a father trying to teach a kid how to fly their kite. On Sunday mornings, there's a group of gentlemen that come in. They set up their own volleyball net and play. I mean, it's just a beautiful park. And if you put a school building in there, and then you put 2 through roads on each side of it, I mean, you really demolished what was a unified space. I mean, people could have their kids at Mikey's place and have their older kids at the other playground and still keep an eye on it. It's just, you know, and yesterday I saw a parent with two little kids bike riding on the basketball court with their training wheels. I mean, there's just always everything there. So please don't cut that in half and kill it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Sarah.
Hello, Sarah Gandley, 16 The Cartway. And I've said this before at town council meetings. I will support this referendum. I don't care which site you put it on. I love how people talk about the lovely memories they have of places in town. But as a parent of elementary age children, I'm literally worried about my kids getting shot. I'm worried about my kids being in unsafe schools. So I am just wanting to say that I will support putting this school literally anywhere. We just need to keep it moving. And so Keisha seems like, since Stillman seems like we're not gonna be doing that, Keisha seems like the next best place. So if people, everybody who's been coming out for the past, I don't know, 6 months, complaining about Stillman, I really hope that this wins in a landslide, because all the people who have like, we need to fix our schools. Well, good, now vote to fix our schools.
Robin. Robin is next. I think she's on the end. You're good. You're all set? Okay.
That's the best.
Jen.
Good evening, Jennifer Curry, 162 Straddle Hill. I want to start by thanking the committee members, TSKP and Downs, especially Michael Scott, who I've watched give many presentations and answered countless questions with aplomb. They are working tirelessly on this project, and many of us are thankful for your dedication. I am in full support of the school building plan and referendum. I would just like to see the swing location be decided upon so that the application can be submitted by June 30th and we have the September referendum. I do want to comment on how well attended this meeting is and appreciate many of the people who've been at the other meetings sharing their thoughts and concerns. I also want to share that while there have been individuals that have shared their concerns about the elementary project, specifically the location of the swing school, I want to point out that one group has not spoken up, and one group that quite honestly is as effective as anybody else. I don't like to speak in absolutes, so I don't know that anyone is most affected, but the web community is certainly heavily impacted. Number one, web community is losing their neighborhood school. Number two, the web community will be redistricted and students that were originally went to school together may not. Number three, the web staff will be reassigned across multiple schools. And number four, in all likelihood, web students will transition physical buildings more than any other community. It's understood that most elementary students will face multiple transitions, but the web students will face more. And not one current or future web parent has spoken up at a meeting challenging this plan. So what I would like everybody to really think about and understand is that despite the personal challenges and the personal feelings that web community members might have, they are in support of the plan because they know for the greater good of not only their community, but the entire school community, that this is the right plan. As a side, I wrote this draft a week ago, but I couldn't stop thinking about it last night as I attended the Web and Harlem Wizards basketball event at WHS. An amazing, exciting time for our students, families, and staff. An intensely strong community that I and so many others feel lucky to be a part of. My heart did break a little knowing that web events won't look like this in the future, but I also know that the web community, when dispersed, will carry their energy and involvement with them. Next, I would like the Board of Ed and the School Advisory Committee to revisit the grade level structure of the schools. I was unable to address this in public comment last night since I was at the basketball event. I am in full support for many reasons that our 6th graders need to be moved out of the elementary and understand that there's no room at SDMS. The logical step is to pull the 5th graders with them and create the academy. We get our K-4 schools and avoid a single 6th-year school. However, I am concerned about the 5-6 transition followed by a 7-8 transition. When I have conversations with parents, they say you blink and middle school is done. I have worked in districts with various grade level combinations as well as one that has the 5-6 then 7-8 combo. I love the idea that our students will come together in 5th, but I'm concerned about the environment of a 2-year only building. I have talked to administrators and seen it firsthand. Building a culture and community takes time and can be challenging, and understandably, students and families can be less invested when they're only there for 2 years. Given that the renovated building at Webb will have approximately the same size student population as SDMS, with each housing 2 full grades of our entire town, I'm curious as to whether the idea of having 2 middle schools has ever been talked about, so that the Webb building would be a 5-8 building for half the town, and SDMS could shift to a 5-8 building for the other half of the town. This would allow our students to come together in 5th grade with more than just their neighborhood elementary students. It would still allow for 5th and 6th grade teachers to specialize in subject areas, and it would allow our students to build another culture and community for 4 years. I would have to imagine that this could be easier for the district regarding transportation, because the radius of walkers for both schools would encompass more students and for a longer number of years than busing every one to one and then to another. I'm just curious if it's been discussed, as it might be a better educational plan for our tween and teen students during an already challenging time. And I'm not saying this to delay anything, but since we're still in planning mode, I wanted to bring it up. If we are looking at the district as a whole and going to redesign and redistrict our elementary students, I would wonder if the idea has been explored.
Jamie Lang.
Jamie Lang, 46 Bay Rock. Hi, I'm a resident, I'm a parent, I'm also an educator, not in Weathersfield, but in another town. And I was actually an educator in South Windsor through the 10-year period that they renovated all of their elementary schools, or at least for most of that 10-year period. And while I taught at the high school there, I saw firsthand the effect that those renovated elementaries had on the town and the property values and the desire for people to move into the town. Houses sold incredibly quickly for a ton more than asking, time after time after time. Families were clamoring to move into this town with these bright, beautiful new elementary schools. So it's hard to go from working in a town that's really investing in those facilities to bring the best to their kids to, you know, my daughter attends Highcrest, my son will attend Highcrest next year. They have wonderful educators and teachers and a wonderful community, but like we have to do something to make it safer. When you're in a building with something like 50 different exterior doors, you know, and I'm, as an educational professional, bringing my students through lockdown drills, and I just imagine, like, God forbid anything were to happen, what would that look like in a school like this, where there are so many entry and egress points? I'll also say that one of the things that I saw in my professional experience in South Windsor was that they did have some elementary schools that were quite large in size in terms of student population that necessitated hiring additional administrators. So you had not just a principal, but also an assistant principal at the elementary level. So having an elementary school with a smaller student population, I think, would actually help save on some of those administrative costs in the long term. And then, you know, I really like the idea of a 5-6 school, although I hadn't considered a 5-8 school, so thank you so much for that suggestion. I think based on everything everyone said, it doesn't make sense to build at Stillman. It certainly doesn't make sense to build at Stillman if Hanmer can't be torn down, because then you just have 2 schools in one spot, and that doesn't make any sense at all to me. I would say whatever we do decide to do, I just don't want to get bogged down in the details at this point. Like, I feel like we need to move forward. I think a lot of people feel like we have to do something. So if we know that building new elementaries is in the best interest of our school, of our kids in our town, then let's just make that decision and focus on all the little details when the time comes, when it's appropriate to do so. I think the status quo is expensive, it does our kids a disservice, and it does our community a disservice. And I think to the earlier comments about seniors, you know, these can be really wonderful buildings that work for a lot of people, not just the kids in our school. And so I really hope that as we move toward these referendums, we emphasize those points as well. Thank you.
Philip Peterson. Philip?
I think he left.
No Philip. Steve Caprio.
Hi, Steve Caprio, 311 Garden Street. I swear you're not going to have to cut me off this time, it's going to be short. First of all, thank you to the committee so much and appreciate that you guys met with HDC. I definitely think Stillman, you know, is not the right choice due to the speed constraints and, you know, certainty of execution is not there. So I have 2 young kids. I think it's super important that we pick something that we're going to be successful at. We're going to get the new schools that we need and get kids the education they need. So I definitely think Keisha Farms is definitely, to me, the appropriate option. It gives us the most space to plan in. It also could develop a really special school for Weathersfield. I mean, with the options of having some type of farming, additional fields, the extra resources, the community planning that can go on there, community events, I think it could be something really special and something really special for this side of town. So that's it tonight. Short and sweet. Thank you, guys.
Christine.
Christine Kelly Lasella, 37 Belmont Street, Weathersfield. I'm just going to share this quickly because I think facts are important. And at the excuse me, the March 3rd Town Council meeting, a very brave young girl got up and was speaking about incidents that had occurred at Hamner School. One being a fire, one was that there was a power outage in the school, you know, and she talked about it and how it was scary. There was no fire, and I think it's important that we know none of our elementary schools have had fires. I'm, first of all for renovating our schools. I'm for one swing school. I know a lot of people look at me when I say things and go, oh, she doesn't want it. I think it's a great idea. But I FOI'd the fire marshal, and I have his report. There was never a fire on November 11th, 2021. There was a smoke issue in the attic. I won't read the whole thing. It caused an HVAC unit in the pump room shorted out, and it was a minor smoke condition. The kids were out of the building for 30 minutes with that incident. As for any power outages, he could not find any documented ones for the school. He did recall there was some in the neighborhood, which caused the school. And I think facts are important, because for people to say that our schools aren't maintained might be fair, but they're not that poorly maintained that there's fires. And they had 20 firefighters attend that call. And I wanted to share that because I think it's important. I know the fire marshal had spoke at a meeting at the end of January, and he had questions, and he did identify himself as the fire marshal, but I think he was also speaking as a resident. And I think it's really, really important, and I'm not saying it should be him, but he recommended Keisha as the best site as far as safety, and I'm not sure that you all have met separately with safety people in our town. But I just wonder if someone on the committee there shouldn't be a representative from the fire department or police department giving some guidance. The other point I wanted to make, Bessie Stillman's deed did say for school buildings and school grounds, but there's a second piece to that at the bottom, and it says for any other public purpose of the town of Weathersfield, and that in the event of the use of said premises for any other of this above named purposes, the said premise will revert back to Bessie Stillman and her heirs. So there is an educational building there, that is the Board of Ed. I don't think it gets any more educational than that. The HDC rules on Old Weathersfield, it saddened me to hear someone say, because of our neighbors, we won't go to school there. It's not the neighbors. It's the HDC. They've been around, I think, 1962, and we all, those of us who live there, we've chosen to live there, and we choose to abide by what they say. Now, do I think it was a bad idea? Absolutely, but it wasn't up to me. It was up to them, and I encouraged all of town council and committee members early on in this. I've done it to my own house. It's annoying, it's frustrating, but I choose to live there, and we have to abide, by what they say. I would like the divisiveness in our town to stop. I get catcalled, I'm getting smirked at right now, and I don't like it. And it's wrong. And there's people fear-mongering, people looking at me right now, and all I'm doing is just sharing facts. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm getting really, really tired. Yeah, come on. Why don't you
All right.
come and say what you have to say?
You're very
I'm
vocal
really
on
tired.
Facebook.
All right.
You're very vocal on your opinion.
Can I share that?
All right.
Okay.
That's okay. You can do something else. Okay.
We're all
Who's
good.
next?
Next is Mark Kendrick.
Mark Kendrick.
My name is Stephen Haynes. I
We're
live
like children.
285 Market Street.
Steve, I'll put you down, Steve. I got you. Mark, do we have Mark? Okay. Bob, is it Bob Janes?
Yep.
Bob. Steve, I'll put you down.
You guys planned that.
Probably count for you. You're like definitely in the thousands.
This is good.
Yeah, just add it on after. Anyway, cool. Hi, Bob Janes, 20 Belmont. I'm the field guy that someone referenced earlier. But I just want to preface that, right? I'm also in education. A few people have talked about this before. I work in a neighboring town. And I'm not really talking about after-school sports, right? Like, if you don't have a field near you, you could walk or drive to the bus. It's inconvenient, but like, it could happen. Recreation, I love the path back to the high school. I don't live near there, so I run there or bike there or whatever, right? The people that can't move are the kids. And being in elementary schools with just a playground, it's not the same, right? If you went to, I think we all went to elementary school here, you gotta go outside during recess, play tag with your friends, get the energy out. The physical education class, we used to call gym, you're playing soccer, you're doing all sorts of stuff outside, right? Like, that's an important part of the educational process. Our kids are looking at books, worksheets, screens for a lot of the day, and having that time is vitally important. And 2 of the plans that are proposed have no fields for multiple schools, right? We're talking about Stillman and Highcrest. Keisha Farms has additional fields. Again, not necessarily talking about T-ball or soccer after school, although those are added benefits. I'm talking about the kids that can't move, the kids that go to school, who really I think are gonna need that in their day-to-day educational journey. Thank you.
Matt Cooper. Matt.
That's me, but I'll withdraw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Kim Miller.
I think she left.
Left. Barbara? Yes.
My name is Barbara Rue. I live at 79 Main Street, Weathersfield, and you inherited me from another Rue who lived at 956 Cloverdale Circle. So be grateful he's not here.
I love George.
And we do miss him.
He was a legend.
There is a public meeting on this on June 16th. That is after the last day of school. People are leaving town. We have a history in this town of doing things when people are on vacation, and we shouldn't do that. I would suggest that meeting be held either June 2nd or June 9th. That gives you plenty of time. In case you don't know the history of Webb School, it was a middle school. Webb and Silas Dean were a 7, 8, and 9, and I know this because I was the first 9th grader in that school. So we could eventually, if we look at a 5-8 school, we could do that because there is the auditorium. About the curb cuts, I think that's a real concern. And I think what you do in a situation like that, you plan and you train the children, okay, who's going this way, who's going that way, you go out the store so you avoid the curb cuts. So I think it's a matter of education, to some extent. In terms of the referendum date, I think we should be sensitive. If it's on a religious holiday, it should be moved. You know, we had a big argument in Old Weathersfield about a 4-way stop at Church and Main. We went on and on and on. And you know what we finally did is we put in 4 stop signs. I kind of feel Keisha is like the 4 stop sign problem, in the sense that it makes the most sense. Do something that makes sense. Old Weathersfield, I mean, we could tie you up forever. And if some of you don't remember, the Great Comstock Ferry debacle, how long that took, and that it got thrown out in court because they forgot to ask if they could demolish the barn, I hated writing that brief, and I won't write another one, but I can assure you, if you would try and do this at Old Weathersfield, we would have traffic studies, we've had all kinds of studies, and we paid for it, because we raised the money. Keisha makes a lot of sense. It's clean, it'll be attractive, and there's a lot of ways that the schools can be used in the wider community, and I don't think we're creative enough, especially with high school students with special needs that don't do well during the day, they do better later in the day. So we need to be a little bit creative. So I've probably used up my 5 minutes, and as my father used to say,
2:40.
I'm 90 years old and you should let me talk longer, but I'm not 90.
Last but not least, Mr. Stephen Haynes.
Let me start over again. So my name is Stephen Haynes. I live at 285 Garden Street, which is actually right across from the park. But I'm not commenting about my opinion. I think I've expressed it already. Thank you to the committee. Thank you to town council. Thank you to anybody who did anything positive in this process. I love the idea of creating an equal playing field, so to speak, for all of our elementary schools. I loved hearing you use the word equanimity. Thank you very much. But I want to tag on a remark that was made earlier about the need for even more effort to be put forward to communicating to everybody that lives in the town. There's been a lot of work done so far, but almost every day in a range of different ways I run into people that just don't know anything about what we're doing, in spite of the fact that everybody's kids just don't buy it. So I don't know if that means a mailer, but it might. If we can find a way, either through the committee or through town council, to get something in the mail, preferably something in the mail that's followed by a public meeting, not after all the meetings are done. I'm really concerned, in spite of all the work that we're done here, that there are going to be enough people that either don't know enough and have poorly formed opinions that are going to vote down the referendum. And I really don't think we can let that happen this time. So I just wanted to say that. That's it.
Thank you, everyone. That was it.
I'm just gonna say real quick, the committee volunteered for this position, so they have to be here. This is my job. It's second shift work, but this is my job. This is Randall, Mary Lynn, Tom's job. You're the people that are here on your own time, right? So, among the reasons I like Weathersfield is stuff like this. And the communication problem is challenging. I mean, even in my own town, we face this possibility, but you all are on the front lines of this and appreciate it, okay? That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Well, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? So moved.
Second. Get that recorded. When you look at that slide,
did you guys want to post the unapproved meeting minutes for tonight?
She hasn't done them yet.
Well, I'm just saying when
Yes.
you're ready.